And this is the first segment of this, looking at it as a whole. We're not going to go through verse by verse, but we're going to pick out highlights in this section, 25 through 43, which is really a hoot to read. We'll have some fun with this. So why don't we, before we begin, I've entitled this section called Meet the Masters. And of course you're asking, well, what are they masters of? That's what we're going to be looking at. So meet the masters, and let's read together verses 25 through 43.
After Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so that I can go home to my own country. Let me take my wives and my children whom I have acquired by working for you. Then I'll depart, because you know how hard I've worked for you."
But Laban said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." He added, "Name your wages, and I will pay them." Jacob said to him, "You know how I've worked for you, and how your livestock is spared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I've been. But now, when may I do something for my own household? What can I give you?" he asked.
Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything if you will do this thing for me. I will again feed and keep your flocks. Let me pass through all your flocks today, removing from there all feed and the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages."
So my honesty will answer for me later when you come concerning my wages. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, found with me, will be considered stolen.
"Agreed," said Laban. "Let it be as you have said." The same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, and all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flocks.
Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from the poplar, almond and plane trees, and made white strips on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white tender wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the water troughs, so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted.
Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streak and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban, and the strong ones to Jacob. In this way the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks and maidservants and manservants and camels and donkeys.
Okay. All right. It's a,
Shark Tank.
what's that?
Shark Tank.
Yes. Okay, so what we have here is a blossoming, actually a growing young family. And Jacob has served his father-in-law now for years and years and years. I don't know exactly how many it would be, way beyond the 14 years. I would assume. I don't know the answer to that. But at one point, upon the birth of Joseph, he goes to his father-in-law and says, gee, you know, we've done this deal for a while, and I want to, you know, I want to go. You know, I want to go. And his father-in-law says, well, you know, son, I figured out that because you're here, I am blessed. I need you to stay. And therein is the beginning of the story. Jacob wants to go, Laban wants him to stay. And so, you know, then he says, what do you need? What do you need to stay? You know, kind of like a grappling employer would, you know, kind of searching to try to keep a quality person that he knows he's been taking advantage of for years. That's how I read it. Maybe because I've done that. Jeez. You know, what will it take? He says, well, you don't have to give me anything. And then he proposes this deal, and he says, my honesty will speak for me. And he says, let's go through, I'll go through, and I'll pick out the worst of the flock, you know, the weak. In that case, in this case, the speckled meaning the weaker. That's what's implied here. The less, you know, the less quality of the not the crop, the flocks. And I'll take those as my wage. You keep all of the best, and you know, I'll continue to tend your flock. So then it gets a little confusing in the text. In verse 35, I read it to mean, so he, because it goes through here and it doesn't really identify who he is, which is often the case in the text. And so you have to kind of derive it. And I looked at several sources, and you know, really it's not clear. So this is how I read verse 35. So he, and it could be Laban or Jacob. I think it's Laban, but it could read either way. So Laban removed on that day, where it says Jacob was going to go out and actually do it, but for some reason, I think Laban went. That's what's in my head. But you could read it either way. They went out the day the striped, the spotted male goats, and all the speckled and spotted female goats, every one with white in it, and all the black ones among the sheep, gave them into the care of Jacob's sons. Now Jacob's got a whole flock of teenagers, and maybe older now, of sons taking care of it. So I think it was either Jacob gave them to his sons or Laban gave it to his sons. And I don't think it really matters. But then in verse 36, we got the same issue again. And he, this time it's got to be Laban. Because it says, and Laban put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. So the flock was separated. There are now two flocks. The lesser flock, the weaker flock, is under the care of the sons, and Jacob has agreed to tend his father-in-law's flocks elsewhere, and he's distant. He's out of reach, out of communication with his father-in-law. There's a distance of 3 days. And there is where genetic engineering goes into effect through this whole thing with the sticks. And we're not going to get into all of this. But the whole idea that Jacob came up with this ingenious way to engineer his flock and to separate those two out. And so he was able to create his own flock. Somehow, all of a sudden, from this one flock of thoroughbreds, we started to appear speckled and spotted animals. So, is that how you guys read it? Yes. Uh-huh.
Yes.
My Geneva Study Bible has a footnote down here on 30:35.
Yeah.
And he removed that day. The unscrupulous Laban immediately cheated. According to the agreement, the unusually colored animals should have been Jacob's starting flock, verse 32.
Jacob began with none of these, a fact highlighting the supernatural blessing on him.
Okay, I didn't quite get that, because it sounds like he separated, it sounds like Laban did the deal, but did I not read it correctly?
Laban took the spotted ones and the speckled ones himself and separated them. That's what it sounds like. From-
So Laban, yeah, we'll look into that a little bit more. Maybe I'm just not reading it. I'm not reading it correctly, but the point, the spirit, I'm right there with with the spirit of the text. The two guys are vying for position. You know, the two guys, Laban and Jacob, are not thinking win-win. They're thinking me win, and I think, and that's where we're going with this, with the two masters, this duo, and that's what we're going to explore with. The first thing, the first thing I'd like us to look at is, while we're looking at these two characters in this context, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what do we know about Jacob? Who is this guy? And let's not be too hard on him. Let's think, and what kind of man is Jacob from what we know?
Schemer.
Well, yeah, from his very name. Now I need my little pen thing. Here it is. I'm going to write some of this down here. He's a schemer. How do you spell schemer?
S-C-H-E-M.
M-E-R.
This doesn't do spell. S-C-H-E-M-E-R. Is that close enough?
Yes.
Okay, he's a schemer, and we know that. We know that even but from birth. Heel grabber. We know that. So, okay, that's one aspect. What else do we know about him?
That underlines the fact he's ambitious.
Yeah.
He's got a scheme that fulfills ambition.
Where have we seen him ambitious?
Cooking stew.
Yeah, the stew. Yeah, at a young age. But what was his ambition for? What's that? He wanted the birthright. He wanted something that he perceived as value, and he went after it. And he was very innovative in how he did it. Smart. He's really smart.
And he's a hard worker.
Yeah. Yes, he is. He's smart. He's a hard worker.
Persistent, obviously.
Persistent. Yep. I think so.
I have another note here.
Yeah.
It says 39. Jacob's success was due to God's grace, not to his ill-founded theory of animal husbandry.
Well, yeah, I think we would all agree with that one. It would be hard to go over to CSU and animal genetics lab and why aren't you guys doing this? Yeah.
Jacob has to have great. He gets up again. I mean, he gets knocked down a bit. He got kicked out. He's not off running. I mean, he got Leah instead of Rachel.
Yeah.
He constantly gets kicked down. He gets back up.
I think persistent. I think he's patient.
Yeah.
I think he's very patient with what he's doing. And Carl, I hear that. I see that hand. Go ahead, Carl.
I think he had a way of putting Laban at ease, or he got this plan of putting in place. I'm not going to be, I'm going to be really honest with you, and if you catch me cheating, if any all one-colored animals are in my flock, then you'll know that I stole them. So he was putting himself in this precarious position, which seemed great to Laban, but he knew that probably wasn't going to be the result, because he had watched the flocks and he knew how the system worked. But he was a deceiver in that aspect, of giving Laban that looked like a good promise to me. That sounds good to me. That'll keep this boy honest. He's working for me now.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. He covered himself really good.
I'm not I don't know much about conning, but I think we'd all agree that what really makes a good con is you convince the other person it's their idea, right?
And convince them that you're trustworthy.
Yeah, I mean the whole idea, and I think he's a great quote negotiator, con man. He's good at this. You know, my honesty will speak for me. He's given, let's call it giving him rope. I think he's giving him rope. I think this is a con. Now, how he knew about this kind of genetic engineering, that's beside the point. But yes, I think Jacob was positioning to get his father-in-law set up, a setup. I don't know how do you guys think about that? On the other hand, I would go so far to say I think there's a loyalty aspect to Jacob. Think about all he's done over these years, but is it out of true loyalty? Would you call it loyalty or delayed gratification? Tremendous amount of patience. How would you work with those terms I've just thrown out?
Well, he had a goal and he was wanting to work towards it no matter what.
Yeah. So he's goal oriented.
And he, if he becomes strong enough with these flocks, he's going to be free and Laban. He can take his flocks and go because he's has acquired enough physical wealth that he doesn't need Laban anymore. And that will be broken.
Yeah.
And he has given Laban what supposedly is the best, perfect animals, and Laban, okay, that's great.
Let's move on. Let's look at now Laban. We've got somewhat of a profile built up of Jacob, and it's mixed, isn't it? I mean, there's some really great qualities of Jacob, but there are some other, there's some other things, and it's not far from where we are as people as well.
There is a family underlying of the family desire on both of their
Yes.
parts. It's there.
Mhm.
You don't see it all the time, but it's like they go to a certain point and they'll say, well, I shouldn't have done that, this is family.
And is that true of Laban? I think it's true of Laban. He's family oriented.
Yeah.
And what else do we know about Laban?
You can't help but leave ahead. And the point is, because Jacob's operating with information, we're not operating with all the information Jacob has at this point.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things they have is that Laban's been cheating him on his wages. Several times he's changed his wages.
Yeah.
And Jacob, a lot of this reading stuff was the result of a dream an angel gave him, saying, God's on your side. I've seen how Laban's been treating you. I'm setting you up for departure. So Jacob has a relationship with God of some kind at this point that's given him confidence.
Yeah, and extreme patience. So could we say Laban is a cheater?
Yeah. Laban, God saw this and came down and said, Jacob, I'm on your side.
He's a cheater.
He changed his wages.
I think he's a schemer too.
Yeah. And he said he changed Jacob's wages several times, meaning whatever that means.
Boy, and Jacob, you got to hand it to Jacob. He hangs in there. He doesn't. He's got an amazing ability to see a goal and a focused direction towards that goal. You got to hand it to that guy.
Basically a game of chess.
Yeah, he's very patient to checkmate.
Yeah.
What else do we know about Laban? He's family oriented. He's a cheater. He's a schemer. He's become prosperous.
The prosperous.
Yeah, he's become prosperous. He BE. He's become prosperous because of prosper.
I think Laban had a pretty warm feeling toward Jacob. In fact, I think he didn't want Jacob to go. And of course, that connection with these two daughters. He didn't want to lose his two daughters to some guy. And over the years, he's really become fond of him because, man, how could you not be? This guy keeps his word. He works hard. He's diligent, and
Well, you'd hope that there'd be some
Yeah.
some blood flowing in this guy's veins.
Yeah, so there has now been a family attachment, but yeah, Jacob is saying, I wanna do it for my own family, I don't wanna be working for your family.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of not, that's something I think that can happen to us as we get so involved, and dedicated to other people that we forget about our own
Yeah.
life or our own family. We need to do something for your own family. And that started hitting me, this
Yeah.
conference started saying,
I think it's so funny. Laban is so honest here. It's almost like he's just matter of factly saying, "Well, no, since you've been here, I've been blessed, and so I need you to stay." I mean, that is so self-focused in his language. You know, you think, gee, didn't he know? I mean, what is this guy's social skills like? So anyway, there we got, you know, we got Jacob and Laban, and we kind of profile, and here is the tension. I got this funky little drawing. You know, I want to go. No, you need to. I need you to stay. Key term here. No, you need to stay. No, I need you to stay. I need, and that's the key idea here. So Jacob wants to go. See the arrow? You know, he wants to go. Here's the arrow here, and then here's Laban, and he's lassoing the arrow, saying, "No, you gotta stay back." Okay. So with that, I'm setting this up. Okay, I want to go. No, you gotta stay. Okay, what's going on here? So let's kind of move on. Where do they agree? What do they agree upon?
limited contract,
A what?
limited contract, a limited agreement, yeah, a certain amount.
And what is the agreement point? I want something more fundamental than that.
Dividing the flock.
Okay, that's towards a solution. What do they agree upon?
Jacob stays and tends the flocks.
What's that?
Jacob will stay and tend the flocks.
That's solution. I want to go more fundamental. What is the tension in this story?
They agree Jacob can go at some point.
Okay, that's solution two. And guys, I don't mean to be leading you on here. It's just they both believe that this relationship, they are bound to a relationship. They both believe they are handcuffed to each other. See the little drawing down here? They both believe they are handcuffed. That is what's going into this story. They're bound to each other. Okay? Their condition is they are bound to each other.
Where do you feel that Jacob is bound to Laban? I can see where Laban is bound to Jacob, wanting him to stay prosperous, but I don't figure out where you feel that Jacob feels bound to Laban.
Why would he go to his father-in-law and ask for permission to go? If he wasn't bound, he'd say, "The heck with you, I'm leaving. I'm out of here." Laban would wake up one morning and, "Hey, where'd the family go?" Obviously, I mean, yeah, he's bound. There's something that has to happen for that. There's something in Jacob's head that has to happen for him to be released, or he wouldn't, or he'd just go do it. So he's bound, and then Laban's bound. They both believe they're bound. So where do they disagree?
We'll go back to bound. I think Laban, if he's bound because he really has nothing of his own. He makes a point. I need to start working for my own family. So
Now,
he can't take.
This is
these people
Jacob?
back. Jacob can't. Jacob has nothing to take back with him except maybe his wives and kids. He has no dowry or rent. So he's bound to the fact he's got to start building his own assets.
And he's clear on that. He says, "What about me? I've made you successful." They both agree on that. They both agree in the text that Jacob's presence has made Laban successful. That is part of the binding relationship. Okay? So where do they disagree? Well, I think, guys, it's obvious here that they disagree on the solution. Now, I'm being intentional about this because we're going to go somewhere with this. They are bound in this relationship, but therein is the tension of what do we do about it. That's where the story gets really interesting. The basic idea here is Jacob wants to go, he wants release, and Laban says, no, I want you to stay. Yes?
Well, so Jacob's kind of giving mixed messages because in 31, Laban says, what shall I give you? Don't give me anything. And then a little later he says, let me take these speckled ones and the imperfect ones and so forth. And this will be my wages. So don't give me anything,
But give me this.
right.
Well, that's how I read it. Yeah.
It's different. If you had a company and somebody says, give me a salary, you pay him a salary, that's one thing. But I don't want a salary, I want shares in your company.
Uh-huh.
So as a company prospers, I'm prospering with the company, I'm not taking, because he said he changed his wages several times, and I don't know how that plays into here. But I think he wants part of the company, and the company is, of course, the assets of the sheep.
Yeah, in my opinion, for what it's worth, is I'm thinking Jacob is disarming here for a minute. It's all a setup. I'll take the worst. I'll take the stuff you don't want. I'll take the weak and the lame, and that'll be my wages because I'm an honest man.
I'm a good
Isn't it true when someone comes up to you and says, I'm an honest man? It makes you wonder.
You know, this would be the first time a political person is described in Scripture.
This is where this is the
First
proof text.
politician.
Well, guys, we're out of time, and where I just want to leave it today is that we've got these two men who are masters at something, and they're masters at the same game. They are in a binding relationship, and the solution to that relationship is what makes this thing so interesting. And we're going to drill down and look at this. And guys, what we're going to find, it's not too far from our own experience. Okay? We'll look at it next week.
Thank you, Mike.
I think Laban forgets that Jacob is